Well, one of the most central components to modern-day warfare is, of course, the use of drones. The industry is growing so fast, they have hundreds fewer drone pilots than they need. And they're even lowering their standards to make it a little bit easier to get a job in the field of drones. Drone strikes have been responsible for the deaths of several high-level members of al-Qaeda, but additionally have killed countless civilians, women and children included. In turn, the drone strikes have served as one of the top recruiting tools for militants. Now, Pakistan's ambassador to the United States said her country will continue to demand that the CIA stop its drone strikes.
The whole drone program is seen as it tests the relationship at every juncture, and we honestly feel that there are better ways now of eliminating al-Qaeda, which has been done with our help, and we have been doing that consistently. We're the heavy lifters in this relationship.
And to talk more about all of this, I'm joined now by Scott Horton, contributing editor for Harper's Magazine. Hey there, Scott. So the U.S. being criticized, once again, being called upon by Pakistan to end the use of drones. What do you think the impact of this will be in terms of policy?
Well, the big question is, how serious is Pakistan this time? Because, of course, this issue has come up many times before. I think we now know through some disclosures that came out in the course of the last 2 years that President Pervez Musharraf entered into a secret agreement with the United States back when he was in power, under which he gave authority for the use of drones, including setting up a drone base on Pakistan's territory. And this agreement included sort of protocols for how strikes could be carried out with the approval of the Pakistani government. But it also stated that the U.S. had to keep this approval secret, and noted that the Pakistanis would deny that they'd ever approved it. So we know that that arrangement existed for many years, and we know it existed, they continued under the civilian government. But what's changed since approximately a year and 3 or 4 months since the attack on Abbottabad is that the government of Pakistan seems now really to have turned against the use of drones and to be much more serious in its opposition to it. And we see this coming out of the civilian leadership as well as the military leadership. Now, that changes the dynamics entirely. Of course, the U.S. drone base in Pakistan was shut down. It's been much more difficult for the U.S. to carry out these operations, but also the legal predicate, the legal authority for these drone strikes to occur evaporates when Pakistan withdraws it. But I think still most observers have a good measure of skepticism about Pakistan's denial, because it's clearly the case that at least some of the drone strikes are occurring with the authority of the Pakistani government, while others are not.
Let's put aside just for a moment some of the criticism coming from Pakistan and look simply at the drone programs we have. On one hand, drones really being responsible. Oh, okay, well, let me go back. I don't want to put these numbers up quite yet. We have drones being responsible for the deaths, as I mentioned earlier, of some high-level al-Qaeda officials. And it really comes at a minimal price to the life of U.S. boots on the ground. So that's one of the things that people behind these programs really cite as a good thing. On the other hand, we have heard time and time again, including from some of our friends and allies in places like Pakistan and elsewhere, that when these strikes happen, that this is the #1 recruiting tool to get more people to come on board against the U.S. Talk about how these two things balance out in terms of the drone policy here in the U.S.
Well, even within the U.S. intelligence community, these strikes are very controversial. So we have a number of critics there who say that these are tactics in search of a strategy, that strikes individually may be successful, they may hit their appropriate target, they may produce a success. But you have to consider this in a broader context. So how is it affecting the political situation on the ground in Pakistan? How is it affecting the perception of the United States? And I think what we've seen over the last few years is that this has led to a demonization of the United States in Pakistan. We can now look across the political spectrum in Pakistan, from the People's Party to the tribal groups, and one thing that unites the entire spectrum is condemnation of the drone program and the U.S., the way the U.S. is using it, the high number of civilian casualties, and the false strikes, the mistaken strikes. This has really agitated the country. And it's also led to deterioration of U.S. relations with the Pakistani intelligence community and military. So there may be tactical successes for the United States, but right now it does not look strategically like a success for the United States. So a lot of people, I'll just say Admiral Blair is one of the senior national security advisors of Obama who left after 2 years in office. He left saying that he thought this drone program in Pakistan was not successful. And he's one person who's spoken publicly about it, but there are a number of others behind the scenes who have the same opinion.
And let's broaden this a little bit, because it's not just, of course, the drone program in Pakistan. It's not just the CIA drone program. The drone use overall is growing. And now I want to put up those numbers. Currently, the U.S. military actually has 7,500 drones. Drones make up about 1/3 of Air Force aircrafts. And the average drone, for those of you who don't know, it can zoom in and read a milk carton from 60,000 feet away. So Scott, real quick, let's just talk about numbers like this and what they tell us.
Well, I mean, it's an effective way for the U.S. to fight in dangerous and difficult terrain, like the border zone between Afghanistan and Pakistan. It would allow the U.S. to be active there with a very, very modest footprint and personnel, with very few people on the ground to maintain and service the drones. So I think it's highly valued by the U.S. military and intelligence community for those reasons. But, we're still going to come back to the question of how they're used and the effects it has. And, we talked about Pakistan. We could also look at the way drones have been used in Afghanistan across the frontier, where a number of the strikes that we've had, wedding parties, other civilian gatherings, struck farmers in the field instead of terrorists. So, successful strikes that actually hit a correct target don't really cause that much problem for the United States, but the mistaken strikes certainly do.
And real quick, Scott, I want to put up something I found, because good strategy or bad strategy, it seems to me at least that drones are here to stay. The Air Force has about 1,300 drone pilots, which is about 300 less than it needs. And this is a website, or rather I found a website that shows a bunch of job recruiting tools. And on the job website, it shows just how many job openings there are for unmanned aerial vehicle pilots or instructors. So, I mean, what do you think? Does this mean that this is here to stay?
Oh, I think in a huge way. I think we're on the really just at the threshold now of a very dramatic expansion in this drone industry. And we're going to see this domestically in the United States and probably in Europe as well, dealing with things like traffic control and police support and so on. So if we don't have 30,000 drones operated over the territory of the United States in the next decade, I'll be surprised.
All right, Scott Horton, contributing editor for Harper's Magazine. Always good to have you on the show. Thanks so much.
Great to be with you.